I used to believe the holidays revealed who people truly were, not through big declarations, but in subtle gestures. The way they tied ribbons on gifts, the songs that slipped from their lips while they cooked, the names whispered during quiet prayers. Looking back, I wonder how I could have missed the clues hidden in garlands and glasses of wine. Christmas was supposed to be her season. At least, that's what she told me. Maybe she only loved it because she knew I did. She was flawless at playing the role. A tree trimmed with perfect golden bows. A table staged like something out of a glossy magazine. Matching pajamas for the whole family, including the dog. She called it curated joy. I used to think that was charming. Now, it feels more like a performance. That year, something in the air was different. Not wrong exactly, but thinner, as if the house had less oxygen than usual. Maybe it was the way her laughter carried a second too long, or how her hand always drifted back to her phone, like it had its own magnetic pull. I'd watch her eyes flicker across the screen before she quickly flipped it over. She told me it was work, that her firm couldn't spare her even during Christmas. And I believed her, because that's what love does. You trust until the evidence leaves you no other choice. Our families gathered at her parents' home that year, a grand place in Connecticut, with white columns out front and banisters wrapped in evergreens. Her father tolerated me well enough. Her mother wore a smile that showed too many teeth. I busied myself with small tasks, carrying desserts, clearing snow from the steps, tending to the fire. She once told me that was what she adored most about me, that I made things easier. Dinner was served at 6. The roast came out perfect. Wine flowed generously, and the jokes were safe enough for her grandmother to chuckle at. I sat beside her, as I always did, but instead of reaching for my hand under the table, her fingers found her phone whenever she thought no one was watching, except I always was. Introductions followed. Her cousin paraded a new boyfriend. Her younger brother showed off his fiancée, and then her sharp-tongued aunt leaned forward with her usual bluntness. "And this fine man here, he's your husband, isn't he?" That's when it happened. She laughed, not cruelly, not unkindly, just lightly, as if brushing away dust. "Oh, him," she said, resting her hand on my shoulder like I was nothing more than a placeholder. "He's just a friend. Just a friend." The words landed before I fully understood them. My chest tightened, not breaking, but straining to hold itself together. The room filled with uneasy chuckles. I forced a grin, pretending to share the joke. Her mother's brow lifted. Her father stared at his plate, and her eyes never once met mine. I excused myself with a laugh, saying I needed to refill the wine. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter and drew slow breaths through my nose. My hand shook slightly as I poured a glass of Pinot Noir I couldn't even taste. Deep down, I'd already known. It wasn't just the phone. Love doesn't forget how you take your coffee. Love doesn't lose the rhythm of your stories or the sound of your laughter. She had stopped asking about my day weeks ago, and I had stopped offering. Back in the living room, presents began to gather beneath the tree. I had chosen something thoughtful for everyone, each one carefully wrapped weeks earlier. For her, I'd picked a small, elegant gift. She had no idea I'd looked through her phone. I hadn't planned to. But when I stumbled on those messages, those intimate confessions hidden behind fake contact names and late-night timestamps, something inside me hardened. I saved screenshots, arranged them neatly by date. At first I told myself it was only for clarity, for closure. But perhaps I already knew I'd need them. When I rejoined the circle, glass in hand, I set her present at her feet. She smiled absently before handing me mine, a book, some generic political memoir I'd never asked for. Her grin didn't reach her eyes. "Thought you might find it interesting," she said. "Thanks," I replied. Then, after a pause, "Actually, I got something a little more personal for you, too." She tilted her head, curious. The others leaned closer, sensing the shift in the room. I slipped an envelope from my coat pocket, peeled it open deliberately, and offered it to her. "What's this?" she asked, still wearing that thin smile. "A memory," I said softly, "or maybe a whole collection of them." She pulled out the first page, and her smile collapsed. I turned to the rest of the room. "Since I'm just a friend, I said evenly. Maybe it's only fair you all know how she talks to her other friends. The silence was heavy. Slowly, I began to read. My voice didn't rise. I didn't slam the table or throw accusations. I simply read aloud. Friday, 12:43 a.m. I wish he'd stay at work longer. Every time he talks about his projects, I want to crawl out of my skin. I don't think I've loved him in years. I guess I just owe him something. Not love, maybe gratitude. That's enough, isn't it? The words slipped out before I even realized I'd said them. Fabric rustled as her aunt shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her brother coughed into his fist. No one laughed this time. My wife's face had gone pale, drained of all color, stiff as the snow outside. Her hand jerked toward her phone out of habit, as if a quick message might rewrite the moment or erase the history now laid bare in my hands. I looked at her, not with rage, but with a kind of sharp, unshakable clarity. You said I was just a friend, I told her, steady as stone. So maybe it's fair they know what kind of friend you've been, too. I placed the envelope in her mother's hands. Would you mind passing those around? They're illuminating. The sound of pages sliding from one hand to another filled the room, followed by scattered gasps. A cousin whispered into her palm. Her father pushed his glasses up his nose and read quickly, searching for some loophole, some lifeline that could rescue her from what this had become. Her voice finally broke the silence, brittle as glass. What are you doing? What you wouldn't, I replied, telling the truth. The room was still, unnervingly so, the kind of silence that comes right before something shatters. She scanned the faces around her, eyes darting for someone, anyone, to jump in, to defend her, to call me cruel or theatrical. But no one moved. She shot to her feet, chair toppling behind her. This is not the time or the place. And yet, I said evenly, you made it the place the moment you introduced me as just a friend. You opened the door. I'm simply stepping through it. My voice didn't tremble once. Maybe because I'd rehearsed this in my head 100 times. Or maybe because heartbreak had already bled out of me. All that remained was the echo of what we used to be. Her mother stopped reading, staring at the words trembling in her hands. Then she turned to her daughter, horror etched across her face. You were sending him messages while we were lighting the Advent candles? She's lying, my wife muttered weakly. Not lying, I said, scrambling. She's making this worse than it is, she protested. But even her voice lacked conviction. Her father, a man who rarely spoke, lowered his gaze and asked quietly, Is any of it untrue? She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her cousin slid one page across the table to her fiancé, who raised his brows. Someone else discreetly snapped a photo of the printouts, as if this were evidence in a courtroom rather than Christmas Eve in a house heavy with garland and glazed ham. I looked at her one final time. Her cheeks were flushed now, arms crossed offensively. The phone she had clung to for months like oxygen lay dead on the coffee table, its black screen exposing everything she tried to hide. You could have just told me, I said softly. You could have said you wanted out. Still, she stayed silent. I reached for my coat. Where are you going? A voice asked from behind me. Maybe her grandmother, maybe no one at all. Home, I said, wherever that ends up being. I didn't ask for the book back. I didn't say goodbye. I simply walked into the snow, each boot print carving a path down the driveway. I wasn't coming back. The cold slapped me awake, sharp and honest. For the first time in months, I wasn't guessing. I wasn't scrolling through call logs or pretending not to smell another man's cologne on her jacket. I knew, and strangely, I wasn't furious. Just empty, as if love had been siphoned out of me slowly, drop by drop, until nothing remained but frost and breath and silence I couldn't unhear. I sat in the car for a long time. The heater hummed, but I didn't feel it. I didn't try to cry. I just stared at the dashboard, listening to the engine tick, mourning the version of me who had walked into that house hours earlier, still clinging, still hoping, still waiting to be chosen. That man was gone. Snow piled on the windshield. I finally unlocked my phone, opened a new note, and typed 3 words. Now I know. By morning, the family chat was a storm. Screenshots, photos of the printouts, her mother's text. We deserve an explanation. Her father didn't type a word. He simply removed her from the group. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the morning wandering an empty city muffled by snow. Coffee shops half-shuttered. Shoppers bundled in scarves, clutching paper bags of last-minute gifts. The world carried on, indifferent. That's the thing about heartbreak. It feels like your universe has stopped spinning, but no one else gets to notice. By afternoon, she called. I let it ring. Again and again. Eventually, I answered, not to speak, just to listen. Her voice cracked before she even said my name. I never meant to humiliate you. I exhaled. But you did. It wasn't supposed to come out like that. I panicked. I didn't think you'd. Read it. I cut in. Tell the truth? You didn't think I'd have the courage, the decency, the strength. She went silent. I was never perfect. I continued. God knows I wasn't. I worked too much. I forgot dates that mattered. I let distance creep in. But I was never cruel. I never lied. I never set out to hurt you. Then I stopped. If you were unhappy, you should have left. The silence that followed seeped into my bones. Then, in a voice small and childlike, she whispered, I don't know who I am without you. For a flicker of a second, something stirred. Pity, grief, regret, I couldn't tell. Maybe all at once. You need to figure that out, I said quietly. But not with me. And I hung up. I spent Christmas alone. It sounds bleak, but it wasn't. It was calm, healing. I drove north until the roads were unfamiliar and rented a tiny cabin through an app I'd never tried before. No signal, no buzzing phone, just a fireplace, a few old books, and a box of ginger cookies left as a welcome gift. That night, I sat by the fire and let the flames blur. I thought about all the versions of us that could have worked. If timing had been kinder, if honesty had come earlier, if love had been chosen instead of convenience. And then I let them all burn out with the embers. In the weeks that followed, she tried again. Emails, apologies, a handwritten letter on thick cream stationery. I thought you'd never leave. I took that for granted. I thought just a friend would sting. But I didn't think you'd take the whole house down with you. I never replied. Because here's the truth. Sometimes silence isn't revenge. It's dignity. It's knowing you already gave enough, stayed too long, endured more than you should have. And now, finally, you're choosing yourself. I left the city. New job, new apartment, new routines. I kept one copy of the printouts, sealed in an envelope at the back of a drawer. Not for revenge, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that even during the holidays, when the lights are warm and the smiles are rehearsed, truth has a way of breaking through. The following Christmas, there were no formal dinners, no curated tablescapes, no forced introductions. Just me, a handful of friends, a crooked little tree, and laughter that felt genuine. Someone asked me if I still believed in love. I smiled, slow and real. Yes, I said,